Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Okay. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
My interpreter soon coming.
Yes. She's
Okay.
She's coming.
Oh, just a moment, please. I call her.
Okay.
My interpreter 8 o'clock coming.
She's joining in a minute.
Just a moment.
Yeah. Hello, Prachi ma'am. Yes. Prachi ma'am, can you switch on your yes.
Yeah. Yes. Am I audible?
예, 선생님 들어오시라고요. 예.
So how she can join, sir?
Sir, sir, is this okay now? Or should I close the door?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma'am, can you adjust plain background पीछे?
Or plain, there's nothing now at the back.
ठीक है. थोड़ा सा स्क्रीन को ऊपर ले सकते हैं.
Okay now?
Okay.
I need to shift back a bit. Yeah. Okay.
So, Mr. Yun, you gonna share the presentation from your side?
The translator has not joined yet, or what?
Yes.
Okay. That's why I think he's having problem with the conversation. Just remove this right.
So, ma'am, we'll have to finish it before 5:30. So 5:30 is the deadline.
Yeah. And if there are no questions in the chat box?
No, I think if we don't have much time, then I think we should not take the questions.
No, but
it
if,
depends.
even
It
if we
depends
have
on
time
the
and
time.
if
we
have time and there are no questions, then what to do?
Then we can ask him directly.
Okay. Because at times teachers, they don't type also, no, the questions. Your video is paused.
I think someone else.
Already, there's someone is asking.
Yeah.
No?
She is my interpreter, Mr. Hwang, Mr. Hwang, my interpreter. Okay.
Hi.
선생님
Hi,
이름
good
바꾸세요. 이름을 미스터 윤정현으로 돼 있어.
네.
예.
Yes, you can change your name.
My name is Miss Hwang Youngju.
Miss Hyun
Hwang Youngju.
Hwang Youngju. Okay.
그 채팅에다가 이름 보내보실래요? 그러면은?
제가 바꿀게요, 선생님.
예.
Can you can you change your name?
Who, sir?
I changed.
Yeah. Okay, great. Miss Hwang.
Miss Hwang Youngju. Okay.
Great. So Vishal sir is also joining,
Yeah.
and after 5 minutes, I think we can start.
No, still we have time, no? 4:30. It's 4:20.
Yeah, but if we take 5 minutes before, na, then we have a good amount of time in our hands.
Okay, okay, fine.
Yeah.
No, how many participants? 17 only till now.
Yeah, but it will increase.
Okay.
So
5분
Vishal
뒤에
sir,
시작한다고
Vishal
해요.
sir, can you switch on your camera?
Hello,
Hello.
Deepak,
Yeah,
host
can you
has disabled.
switch on
So your voice
your
is
camera?
breaking.
One minute. Yes.
Deepak,
Yes.
मेरा camera on
Vishal
नहीं
sir,
है.
I have made you the co-host.
Yes, okay.
हाँ.
Madam, namaste.
No, namaskar.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi. So, Miss Wong, this is how it will flow. First, meet me, Mrs. Prachi Ghore. She's the teacher from NI, and she's gonna and meet Mr. Vishal Saraf. He's the head of NI, and he's gonna start this webinar with a brief introduction about NI in Marathi language, and then he will Prachi ma'am, she's the host of for this webinar. Then she'll give a brief introduction about Mr. Yun, and then she will hand over it to you. And then from there, you can explain his presentation. And after that presentation, we would like to hear from Mr. Yun about his experience and how teachers can contribute through his style of work, right?
So I have to start Mr. Yun's presentation.
Yeah, he told me that, right?
Mm,
So that we can save a lot of time. Maybe you will take 40 to 30 to 40 minutes, but that's fine. And I think if we have much time in the end, we can have a Q&A session. But if we don't have time, then I think we can finish with his small speech in the end.
okay. 그 설명 간단하게 하고 소개하고 나서 제가 PPT 틀면은
네.
시작하면 된다고 해요.
예, 아마 선생님이 저는 한국말 안 하고 계속 영어만
네.
하시면 될 거예요. 그
네.
다음에 끝나고 질문한다 그랬어요.
네,
그렇게
맞아요.
예.
근데 이제 시간이 부족하면은 질문 시간 좀 줄이고 한다고
예.
했어요.
예.
So we'll wait for 2-3 minutes, and then we can
Yeah.
start.
선생님이 파워포인트를 하는가 거기서 틀어준 거 한번 물어보죠. 선생님이 하실 거죠?
네, 제가
파워포인트로.
하는 거래요.
예.
네.
प्राची मॅम आवाज येतोय माझा?
हो, येतोय सर. क्लिअर येतो.
मॅम, जे आता कमी संवाद जो होईल ना थोडा ट्रान्सलेट आपल्या मराठीमध्ये पण थोडस त्याचं हे म्हणजे थोडस ब्रीफ असेल तर थोडस करा अगदी समरीच्या वेळेस.
म्हणजे हा समरी म्हणताय ना तुम्ही?
समरी आणि इन केस असं काही पॉज आहे तर मग आपल्याला थोडस त्याच्यावर बोलता पण येईल.
बर. म्हणजे त्यांच्या प्रेझेंटेशन बद्दल म्हणताय का मध्ये?
प्रेझेंटेशन बद्दल. येस.
बर. पण ते चालू असताना मध्ये सर व्हॉइस ओव्हरलॅप नाही होगी ना इफ आय एक्सप्लेन आय से?
ते थांबले असताना चालले आपण.
बर.
दीपक, आय थिंक आपण सुरू करावं वाटतं.
1 minute, sir. Let me record.
नाही, प्रेझेंटेशन चेक करा एकदा त्यांचं प्रेझेंटेशन.
Miss Wang,
Yes.
can you share the screen?
Share
you have-
presentation?
Yes. Can you do that from your end?
Okay, just a moment.
Yes.
This is our presentation.
Yeah.
Great. So you can go back. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think we can start. 1 minute. Vishal sir, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Vishal sir, we can start.
नमस्कार. सकाळ माध्यम समूहाच्या वतीने सकाळ NIE, सकाळ इंडिया फाउंडेशन आणि सूर्यदत्त ग्रुप ऑफ इन्स्टिट्यूट पुणे यांच्या वतीने उपस्थित सर्व सहकारी शिक्षक, मुख्याध्यापक आणि विद्यार्थी पालकांचं मी विशाल सराफ सकाळचं सर्वांचं मनापासून स्वागत करतो. सकाळ माध्यम समूहाच्या वतीने मैत्री डिजिटल युगाशी या ऑनलाईन स्वरूपातील आजची ही 25वी कार्यशाळा आहे. या कार्यशाळेच्या माध्यमातून मागील काही दिवसांमध्ये आपण अनेक राष्ट्रीय आंतरराष्ट्रीय शिक्षकांशी, तज्ञ मार्गदर्शक शिक्षकांशी संवाद आपण साधला. या संवादाच्या माध्यमातून राष्ट्रीय आंतरराष्ट्रीय स्तरावरील वेगवेगळ्या उपक्रमांची माहिती तज्ञ शिक्षकांनी आपल्याला देण्याचा प्रयत्न केला. या कार्यशाळांना विद्यार्थी, शिक्षक आणि पालकांचा उत्स्फूर्त असा प्रतिसाद मिळाला. या कार्यशाळेच्या माध्यमातून आज आपल्याशी संवाद साधण्यासाठी 2020 मधील ग्लोबल टीचर पुरस्कारासाठी अंतिम 10 जणांच्या शिक्षकांमध्ये निवड झालेले दक्षिण कोरियाच्या दक्षिण जिओ प्रांतातील युन जिऑंग-ह्युन हे शिक्षक म्हणून मार्गक्रमण करताना त्यांचा शिक्षण क्षेत्रातील कारकीर्द आणि त्यांचा अनुभव आपल्याशी संवादाच्या माध्यमातून विशद करणार आहे. तत्पूर्वी या कार्यशाळेच्या माध्यमातून ही कार्यशाळा होती ते सकाळ इंडिया फाउंडेशन संदर्भात मी आपल्याला सांगू इच्छितो. सकाळ इंडिया फाउंडेशन ही गरजू व पात्र विद्यार्थ्यांना उच्च शिक्षण देण्यासाठी अनुदान आणि शिष्यवृत्ती देऊन प्रोत्साहित करण्यासाठी, मदत करण्यासाठी सकाळ इंडिया फाउंडेशन कार्यरत आहे. आतापर्यंत हजारो विद्यार्थ्यांनी या फाउंडेशनच्या माध्यमातून शिक्षण पूर्ण केले आहे. भारत आणि परदेशातील शिक्षणाच्या माध्यमातून तंत्रज्ञान, साहित्य, तत्वज्ञान, विज्ञान अभ्यासासाठी पात्र व्यक्तींना शिष्यवृत्ती आणि आर्थिक मदत करणे हा याचा मुख्य हेतू आहे. तंत्रज्ञान, कला, संगीत इत्यादींसह ज्ञानाच्या सर्व क्षेत्रात संशोधनाला प्रोत्साहन देणे हा त्यामागचा हेतू आहे. आजच्या या कार्यशाळेच्या माध्यमातून ग्लोबल टीचरच्या अंतिम 10 जणांच्या यादीमध्ये समाविष्ट असलेले दक्षिण कोरियाचे शिक्षक युन जिऑंग-ह्युन हे यांचा मी अल्पसा परिचय आपल्याला करून देतो. युन जिऑंग-ह्युन हे दक्षिण कोरियाच्या दक्षिण जिओ प्रांतातील जिऑंगनाम-जिन इंडस्ट्रियल हायस्कूल मधील शिक्षक म्हणून कार्यरत आहेत. आपल्या 30 वर्षाच्या शैक्षणिक कारकिर्दीपैकी 29 वर्ष त्यांनी ग्रामीण भागातील शाळांमध्ये विद्यार्थ्यांना शिकवण्याचा प्रयत्न केलेला आहे. जिऑंग इंडस्ट्रियल हायस्कूल मधील ऑटोमोबाईल विभागाचे संचालक म्हणून सुद्धा ते कार्यरत आहेत. विद्यार्थ्यांना व्यावसायिक पात्रतेच्या अभ्यासक्रमावर काम त्यांनी करण्यासाठी प्रयत्न केलेला आहे. शालेय अभ्यासक्रमात वेल्डिंग, ऑटोमोबाईल मेंटेनन्स, बांधकाम, कॉम्प्युटर एडेड डिझाईन, 3D स्कॅनिंगचे विविध अभ्यासक्रमाचा समावेश त्यांनी आपल्या अभ्यासक्रमामध्ये त्यांच्या देशामध्ये केलेला आहे. या माध्यमातून त्यांनी अनेक विद्यार्थी उपयुक्त उपक्रम त्यांनी राबवले आहेत. आपल्या शिक्षण पद्धतीच्या अनुषंगाने त्यांना 2020 मध्ये ग्लोबल टीचर प्राइज साठी त्यांची निवड झाली. आजच्या या कार्यक्रमाच्या माध्यमातून वेबिनारच्या माध्यमातून आपल्याशी भारतीय विद्याभवन व सुलोचना नातू विद्या मंदिर, सेनापती बापट रोड, पुणे येथे उपशिक्षिका असलेल्या प्राची गोरे या ह्युन यांच्याशी संवाद साधतील. शिक्षक म्हणून मार्गक्रमण करताना त्यांनी केलेलं कार्याशी संवाद या वेबिनारच्या माध्यमातून आपण साधणार आहोत. मी पुन्हा एकदा प्राचींना विनंती करेल की आपण ह्युन यांचा परिचय देत या वेबिनारला सुरुवात करावी.
Okay. On behalf of Sakal NiE, in association with Suryadatta Group of Institutes, I take this opportunity to welcome our guest and the participant on the webinar on the topic, The Path I Walked as the Teacher. We have privilege to have with us an expert who shall be reflecting on this topic. I am Mrs. Prachi Gore, as sir introduced me. I am from Bharati Vidya Bhavan, Sulochana Nathu Vidya Mandir School. Participants, let me just now brief you with the proceeding of the webinar. The participants can type their queries and questions in the chat box, which will be addressed at the end of the session by our expertise. शिक्षकांना काही प्रश्न असतील तर त्यांनी ते चॅट बॉक्स मध्ये टाईप करावे आणि वेबिनारच्या शेवटी आपण त्यांच्या ज्या काही शंका असतील त्या सरांशी बोलून त्याची उत्तरं तुम्हाला आम्ही देण्याचा प्रयत्न करू जास्तीत जास्त. तर शिक्षकांना निवेदन आहे की त्यांनी त्यांचे ज्या काही प्रश्न असतील ते चॅट बॉक्स मध्ये टाईप करावे. Okay, today we are pleased to welcome Mr. Yun Jeong-hyun, an amazing visionary. Yun Jeong-hyun, a teacher at the Jeongnam-jin Industrial High School in South Jeolla province of South Korea, has been teaching students at the schools in the rural areas for 29 years out of his 30-year teaching career. Very amazing, sir. As a director of the automobile department at the Jeonnam-jin Industrial High School, he has vastly expanded the range of vocational qualification. Students can take various courses on welding, automobile maintenance, construction, computer-aided design, and 3D scanning within the regular school curriculum. Sir, this is a very important thing which we are really facing now, that students should have this knowledge, and you have already started this. We are very, very happy to hear this. It has recorded the highest license acquisition rate in the country, which is directly related to the career path of the specialized high school students, and has also been focusing on the character education for the students. Highly talented sharing volunteers work. He's one of the top 10 finalists for the Global Teacher Prize in 2020. Sir, we are very fortunate to have you today for this special webinar. We really welcome you once again. I would hand over this webinar to Ms. Wang Yung for the presentation. आपण सरांचं प्रेझेंटेशन आता पाहूयात की त्यांनी या शिक्षण क्षेत्रामध्ये काय काय कार्य केलंय. त्यांचं एक छोटं प्रेझेंटेशन आपण आता पाहणार आहोत की त्यांचं कार्य त्यांनी या क्षेत्रात कुठल्या कुठल्या क्षेत्रात कसं कसं कार्य केलंय आणि आपण त्यातून काय घेऊ शकतो. Miss, you can start the presentation.
Okay. Okay, let me start our presentation. The title of the presentation is The Path I Walked as a Teacher. Mr. Yun Jeong-hyun from South Korea. I am working as a high school teacher in Korea.
I would like to interfere. Your voice is breaking a bit.
Voice is small?
Yeah, it's not very clear.
Okay. I am working as a high school teacher in Korea. I worked at a rural school for 30 years out of 31 years of teaching. I will talk about the student education environment. Most of the students' middle school grades at the admission are between 80 and 100%. Most of the students who entered the automobile department were not interested in the department. Not only do the students of specialized high schools located in farming and fishing villages have poor basic education, but they are usually less willing to study, have a sense of defeat, and have lost their motivation. Students tend to be absent and leave without notice because of the lack of a clear sense of purpose in school and life. So their school life is very unstable and uninteresting. There are many students from socially vulnerable and disadvantaged families, such as those from basic livelihood recipients, lower income families, grandparents raising families, divorced families, households headed by child, probationals, and their living conditions are extremely poor. In order to pay for part of the family's living expenses and school expenses, many students were working part-time jobs after school. Students who graduate from school without any skills often face poverty. Let's talk about education focused for 30 years. Because the living environment of the students was difficult, they could not afford to attend private academies to acquire skills, so they had to solve the problem only through public education. I felt the importance of school since there are many vulnerable people in rural areas and students who depend on school. Students in farming and fishing villages passed the written test for certificates around 10% and passed the practical test about 50%. Since it is difficult to pass written exam due to a lack of basic education, students needed a foundation that systematically supports their study. To solve the problem, first of all, I used after-school activities and club programs to support students who has poor basic education and low interest in studying. Students are able to study and acquire specific skills to prepare for their future. Secondly, volunteer activities were carried out in connection with schools and communities in order to develop their personality, in which students moved away from their self-centered mindset and live together with each other. I will introduce my teaching method. First, let's talk about computer teaching method. The school I work at is the commercial department. At 5 p.m., the commerce department teachers leave work. The commercial department teaches commercial students after school. I can't ask the commerce teachers to teach the automobile students computers after school. Only the automotive department can solve it on its own. I am computer illiterate. I am not good at computers. Every time I write a document, I ask young teachers. Although I don't know computers, I will explain how my students got the most computer certificates in South Korea. The high school I work in is a school where students learn skills. Learning the skills comes first. The regular curriculum is almost all about learning skills. Of course, there are computer subjects, but there is little time to learn. In today's society, you have to be good with computers. So I taught the students essential Word, Excel, and PowerPoint after school. I can't explain to students how to write computer documents because I don't know computers. So after school, I gather students into a computer lab. I ask students what they are good at. Some students make diagrams well, and some students are good at Word. Some students are good at PowerPoint. I have completed how to do Word and PowerPoint Excel by collecting the parts that students are good at. Each student clearly has something they are good at. Students who are good at computers explain to students who do not know well. In this way, the lead students completely completes Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. Then the leading students guided the other student in pyramid form. I'm a teacher, but I can't explain it to students because I don't know well. The student explained the students. As a teacher, I only need to manage students well. I will talk about how to teach Photoshop. Photoshop led in an unusual way. There were no students who knew Photoshop. Students must learn and have to practice to get a Photoshop certificate. The school where I work has a commercial department. In the commercial department, commercial students learn Photoshop. There was a female student who obtained a Photoshop certificate. The girl was friends with a boy from the automobile department. So I asked the female students to teach Photoshop to the male students of the automobile department. Because she is a student, she doesn't know how to teach students. I helped the way to teach students next to the female students. Boys learn how to use Photoshop. In this way, 40 automobile students obtained Photoshop certificates over a 3-year period. If there was no way, I didn't give up and found a way myself. By educating students in this way, they obtained the highest number of computer certificates among all high schools in South Korea. Also, it is important for students to develop the ability to do things on their own in school education. In other words, schools teach students how to fish. It's not a place to fish and give it to students. You shouldn't educate students by fishing. Teachers should discover and develop students' abilities. The same goes for companies. It is necessary to create an environment in which employees can maximize their abilities. This is because the development of company employees is directly linked to the development of the company. It is impossible to everything and educate students. If a teacher does not know, he or she should find a way and teach students. If there is no way, you have to find a way. If I didn't find a way because I didn't know how to use a computer, maybe my students would have graduated without knowing how to use it. I tried and thought more than others to find a way myself. And I overcame difficulties. I found that the way and continued to pursue it without giving up. There is Koi's law. The life of a fish named koi among the ornamental fish is very unique. This fish grows only 5 to 8 centimeters when kept in a small fish tank. But if placed in a large aquarium or pond, it will grow up to 15 to 25 centimeters. And if released into river water, it will grow to 90 to 120 centimeters. It is the same fish, but if raised in a fish bowl, it grows to a size of a pyramid. It is the mysterious fish that turns into a large fish if placed in river water. This is what people call Koi's law. Koi's law states that circumstances and the size of your thoughts can make a huge difference in outcomes. If we think about our stage as a river rather than a fishbowl, and increase the size of our dreams, our lives will change. Do you grow your students in small fish tanks as soon as Koi's law? Or do you grow it in an aquarium? Do you make them grow in rivers? How are you teaching for your disciples? How are you raising the dreams of your students, preparing for the future? Let me talk about how I taught cars and construction machines. To solve the shortage of practical equipment and the difficulty of educating many students at the same time, I came up with 2 ways as follows. Firstly, after the regular classes, the school classroom and practice room were open until 10 p.m. every night, so that students who are in need of living could come to school to practice and study skills after their part-time jobs were over. Secondly, I solved the shortage of equipment and the concentration of students' education by rotating the club program that students wanted to learn in order. As many students participated in club program and they want various club activities according to their aptitude, it is impossible to teach every student at the same time. Thus, I only taught students how to study and let them study theory and practice on their own. I have developed their ability to learn on their own by conducting various project classes. Also, through various club programs, students were able to find their favorite field and choose a career path they want. I selected excellent and quick learning students as the leading students and directed them first. When the leading students finished their studies, they passed on their skills and learning to other students in the form of a pyramid and divided them into small groups by technology and certificate. I created a job club, a gifted functional club, and a variety of licensed clubs, such as automobile maintenance, agricultural machine maintenance, forklift, excavator, roller, bulldozer, crane, motor grader, document practitioner, MS Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Access, Photoshop, MOS, ICDL, 3D scanner, and CAD. I managed after-school activities every night until 10 p.m., teaching 14 hours a day at school, even on Saturdays, summer and winter vacations, to help students master their skills. As a result, students were encouraged to get many certificates. Students received from 4 to 17 certificates per person and have wider career choices to have a job which is suitable for their aptitude. Now let me talk about public offering. Until 10 years ago, students worked part-time to learn certificates and skills because it takes a lot of money to get a license. Students themselves worked part-time to get a certificate because they couldn't apply for all the skills they learned at home. It was unfortunate that such a thing was brought money from an outside institution through a public offering 10 years ago. So I wrote a letter directly to the Scholarship Foundation. I sent a letter to tell you about the school situation and to support the students. Since 2010, the amount of money received as a public offering has been $630,000. I received a huge amount of money as a public offering project. The money that was selected for the contest was spent on after-school activities for the students. This is why I became a famous teacher in South Korea. Now let's talk about educational performance. Teacher Yun has given 5 national high school certificates and 6 national high school certificates. He coached the 4 winners of the South Korean Reward. The Korean Talent Award is awarded to 50 talented students in each field out of 1.8 million high school students nationwide. The largest number of technical training sessions were conducted in South Korea. Let's talk about volunteer work. In terms of students' personality education, volunteer work clubs were organized and utilized. I led students to volunteer with the talent that they gained through after-school programs, guiding them through social and school education, and providing them with an opportunity to experience for themselves the fact that their talents are useful. In Korea, volunteer work is becoming very popular as it is included in the regular curriculum on an educational level. Since 2005, students have volunteered for 370 children at local children's centers and 1,000 elderly people at nursing homes. Students also perform welding volunteer work and volunteer work in farming and fishing villages for broken facilities using the welding technology they learned at school. After 5 p.m., after the class, volunteer work cannot be enforced at the school, and students volunteered by themselves. Talent Sharing Club members and clubs won 14 ministerial awards, 65 provincial governors, and education superintendents awards. In particular, he was the only middle and high school students to receive the award at the Korea Sharing National Awards. It is the best club among middle and high schools in South Korea and has won the most outreach awards. I will introduce the methods I have taught other than after-school activities and volunteer work. Lifelong education in the community. From 2011 and 2016, 57 external high school students were commissioned to train, and 240 people, including farmers, fishermen, ordinary people, and parents, were brought to the school to practice cars and construction machinery to obtain technical acquisition and certification. Construction machinery practice video. A video showing the practice of construction machinery was filmed and posted on the blog so that students from the other regions and the general public could easily practice. Teacher Yun introduced various methods of obtaining certificates and is visiting the blog about 268,000 views. Guaranteed learning rights by car and weekends. During after-school activities on Saturday, summer, winter vacation from 2009 to 2021, I took 21 students living in Gwangju and Hwasun to a school located in Changwon and Boseong, 65 to 8 kilometers from Gwangju, to provide training on construction machinery and to help them obtain skills and certificates. I invited successful students to the school to introduce their experiences, presenting them with a role model and acted as mentors on behalf of their parents. Teachers have a great influence on the career path of students. Most of the teachers have not read economic newspapers. Most teachers do not know what is going on in the world and only teach their subject to students. Since 1985, I have subscribed to economic newspapers to expand my perspective on the economy and help students find jobs by introducing industry and the world of work. I frequently took care of the disorganized mind by communicating with students on various subjects such as career and personal matters. The knowledge that teachers learned in school or college is the knowledge of the old times. The pace of change in society is fast. To keep up with this pace of change, There must be constant self-development efforts. During my 31-year teaching career, I developed myself with an average of 2,452 hours and an average of 81 hours per year. If I don't host a test site, many students have to go to the city to take the test. Therefore, from 2013, computer testing sites and construction machinery testing sites were attracted to schools 30 times to reduce students' economic costs. In 2011 and 2012, the Jeollanam-do Office of Education participated in the writing of the after-school operation manual and contributed to the standardization of after-school activities by making the after-school operation manual, which is still used as a manual. Since 2008, I have taught 4 students for special education one-on-one classes using after-school activities, weekends, and vacations. They took more time and were more difficult to teach than ordinary students. But they worked hard to guide them to acquire skills and certificates to grow into a respectable member of society. Rollers and motor grader construction machines are expensive to rent equipment. Therefore, in 2012, a method of practicing substitute with an excavator was developed to reduce equipment rent and reduce economic costs. I applied the practice method creatively. From 1993 to the present, I have been commissioned to supervise the National Technical Qualification Examination conducted by the Human Resources Development Service of Korea. I have contributed to the standardization of national technical certificates by supervising the National Technical Qualification Test to 40,000 practical test takers. There were students who the certification exam because they had no money due to the difficult family environment. Since many students were paying for their living and certification fee through part-time jobs, I used my own money to lend the students the leg of fees and expenses. The money I lent was to be paid back by the paycheck the students received in the 3rd grade placement, so that they would not have trouble to get a certificate because of the cost burden. My teacher's notebook has been filled with 17 years of payment for students' exam fees, even more money than my salary. I will talk about how to communicate with students. It's very hard to get people's hearts. In order to get closer to students, teachers must show sincere behavior. I had counseling my scrapping job, information, and newspaper articles that help students. Since the popularization of the internet, I have been posted newspaper articles on my blog to consult students. I showed students employment notices which is suitable for their aptitude and taught them how to plan and prepare for a certificate so they set their goals accurately. If students set goals, they work hard to achieve them and do not wander. Using social media, I understood students' interests and use them for counseling. During the weekdays, weekends, and vacation, I called students frequently to check their difficulties and teach them questions they did not know. Also, I checked the study time and contents by text message and presented the students' career path together. I checked the amount of study by text messaging, even the students who had to go home because the bus stopped early during the week. On weekends, I talked with students by text message. Students in need can call me at any time. I call the students frequently on weekends. I listened to the difficult situations of the students and gave them directions for studying. I talked with students whenever I had time. Now let me talk about how to encourage students. People have good points and bad points. People have one specific area they are better than others. I only praise students for their strengths. Students become more confident when they have praise. Besides the strengths, I usually say compliments to students. If you praise students, they really think they are good at it. I constantly praise the students for their good points, and I saw their change like a miracle. I'm going to talk about how to run the organization and leadership. Companies also use various methods to run their organizations. I also used a variety of organizations for students, just like companies do. For example, the line organization instructed above, the staff organization using staff, and the project organization that temporarily operates the organization according to project issues were used. I have different management organizations depending on the situation, such as students' level, difficulty in obtaining a certificate, and using students with leadership. I use the two types of leading style. One is a charismatic leadership, and the other is leading leadership. Let me talk about the driving force behind the achievements. I have a strong spirit of challenge and have adapted well to change without giving up. Perhaps this is the most important factor. Good choice and concentration are the second factor. The key point was to put the students in the right position and concentrate all the resources. It's always dark when I meet new students at the beginning of the semester every year. It is because there are many difficulties that must be faced in 3 years. However, I always set a big goal for the 3 years from admission to graduation. If you don't set a big goal, students become lazy, and I become lazy too. As you can see in my case, the whole situation was impossible. I didn't even know computers and taught students. Everything has a way. People just don't try and think about finding a way. If you run into a difficulty while challenging, you can go back. There are always more than 2 branches of a tree. You can do it in one of the 2 ways. There are always curiosity and regrets about the path that I have not taken. You may reach your goal, but sometimes you don't. I didn't reach my goal, but I got close to it. If I hadn't put it in the effort, nothing would have been achieved. The plan is only a plan, so the beginning is only a beginning. You can't achieve anything if you don't plan and work hard. I couldn't satisfy the needs of all my students during my teaching experience, which is a shame, but I would like to summarize my 30-year education experience into 3 points. First, I worked at a school in a rural area where the working environment is pretty difficult. Not only are farming and fishing areas worse off than cities, but I had to live away from my family for a long time. Second, I educated students who needed more help. As most of my students were underprivileged, coming from low-income families, raised by grandparents, and divorced families, their lives were too tough to focus on learning. Third, the students I taught were not akin to studying. Of course, some students were good at it, but there were many students who lacked the will to study. I have been teaching for 30 years and have done things that others find difficult to do. I taught technical skills to students who needed more support and taught them the proper skills to grow into democratic citizens. I will talk about the development process of South Korea. It's about the late 1960s when I was in elementary school. Many people were too poor to eat lunch. The United States supported flour, and the school made bread with flour and gave it to the students. During lunchtime, many students went to the waterfront. Being hungry, the students comforted themselves with water. I remember the first time of eating bananas when I was in middle school in the late 1970s. When I was in elementary and middle school, Korea was not a country that lived well. There is nothing but human resources in Korea. We studied harder and worked harder while others slept. Now in my case, I am living a prosperous life, owning 4 TVs including 75 inches, 2 cars, and 2 refrigerators. There was no house, no factory, or anything else because the war between the North and South Koreas broke out in 1950. Imagine what Korea would have done if it had changed from nothing to the current development of Korea. For 70 years before Korea became what it is today, Korea has been running forward. Even now, there are many places and Korean schools that study until 10 p.m. The development of Korea did not happen overnight. Next to where I worked, there are places called Pohang Steel. Iron and coal are imported from foreign countries to produce iron. With a single factory, it is the largest one in the world, the world's most productive, and there are not many people working because of automation. Among the resources for producing iron, Korea only has human resources. The development of Korea was worked only by human power. Even now, most people in Korea are very sincere, hardworking, and concentrating hard on their work. This was the driving force behind the development of the country. Thank you very much. This is the end of our presentation.
प्रेझेंटेशन पाहिलं त्यामध्ये आपण असं बघितलं की आजचे जे आपले पाहुणे आहेत त्यांनी किती कष्टाने त्यांचं हे सगळं आता जे काही त्यांना मिळालंय ते खूप सोपं नाहीये. त्यांनी एक खूप छान गोष्ट एक त्यांच्या अनुभवामध्ये अशी सांगितली की एक प्रकारचा एक मासा आहे जो अगदी छोटा मासा असतो जो 5 ते 7 सेंटीमीटर
Ma'am, can you switch on your camera?
Yeah. त्याला जर का तुम्ही मोठ्या भांड्यात ठेवलं तर तोच जो काही आहे. So my video, I think it is not opening because you have the access. त्यामुळे, am I audible? दीपक सर, am I audible? Yes. की तो एक माशाच्या उदाहरणाने त्यांनी असे खूप छान आपल्याला एक अनुभव त्यांनी दिला की मासा आहे 5 ते 7 सेंटीमीटरच वाढतो, पण त्याच माशाला जर तुम्ही एका मोठ्या भांड्यात ठेवलं तर तो 15 ते 25 सेंटीमीटर वाढेल. त्याला तुम्ही नदीत टाकलं तर तो 19 ते 100 सेंटीमीटर. तर मुलांचं असंच आहे, केवढं ज्ञान तुम्ही त्यांना देणार आहात. तुम्ही अगदी पुस्तकात जेवढं धड्यात शिकवलंय, धड्यात सांगितलं तेवढंच दिलं तर त्याची वाढ तेवढीच होणार. पण धड्या व्यतिरिक्त तुम्ही त्याला काही आणखीन गोष्टी सांगितल्या तर त्याचं ज्ञान आणखीन वाढणार आहे. तोच जे काय तो शिकलाय त्याचा अनुभव जर त्यांनी घेतला, एक्सपिरियन्स त्यांनी घेतला, तर त्याच्यातनं जे शिक्षण त्याला मिळणार आहे हे त्याला आयुष्यभर लक्षात राहील आणि त्याचा त्याला उपयोग होईल. शिवाय आणि त्यांनी असंही म्हणले की शाळेपुरतं म्हणजे शाळेची मर्यादित वेळेतच मी शिकवतो, नंतर माझा आणि मुलांचा काही संबंध नाही असं न करता मुलांना शाळे व्यतिरिक्त शाळेच्या वेळेनंतरही काही प्रश्न असतील, काही अडचणी असतील, त्यांच्याशी बोला, त्यांच्याशी संवाद साधा की काय अडचण आहे, काय तुझ्याकडे इंटरनेट नाहीये का, तुला काय प्रॉब्लेम आहे. थोड्याफार प्रमाणात आपण त्यांच्या ह्या अडचणी दूर करू शकलो तर आपलंही आयुष्य, आपल्यालाही एक समाधान मिळेल आणि ते आयुष्यात खूप पुढे जाऊ शकतील. आणि त्यांचं म्हणणं की पार्ट टाइम आहे, तिथे पार्ट टाइम जॉब करून ही मुलं शिक्षण घेत असतात. तर ही गोष्ट जर आपणही आपल्या इथे आत्मसात करता आली आपल्याला, की आर्थिक परिस्थिती त्यांची नसते, मग पैसे आणि फी भरायची जी चणचण आहे ती एका प्रकारे अशी त्यांना एक जे काही आपण कौशल्य शिक्षण याला म्हणतो ते दिलं तर ते त्याच्याबरोबर त्या शिकून सुट्टीमध्ये उन्हाळ्याच्या दिवाळीच्या तो काही पैसे कमवले त्यांनी आणि त्याची फी भरली तर तो जो आत्मविश्वास त्याच्यात येणार आहे तो सगळ्यात जास्ती महत्वाचा आहे. त्यांचं म्हणणं कोरिया जो आहे, साऊथ कोरिया आणि नॉर्थ कोरिया ह्या 2 देशांमध्ये खूप फाईट होती, त्यातूनही हे उभरलेत का की इतर देश जेव्हा शांतपणे झोपलेले असायचे किंवा इतर देश जेव्हा शांत होते तेव्हा ह्या कोरियन मुलं जी आहेत त्यांनी रात्री 10-10 वाजेपर्यंत कष्ट केलेत, अनुभव घेतलाय, शिक्षण घेतलं, सर्टिफिकेट्स मिळवले, ज्यामुळे आज कोरिया जो आहे देशामध्ये पूर्ण आपल्या अखंडामध्ये त्याचं जे नाव आहे ते सगळं ह्याच्यामुळे आहे. आणि सरांचं ह्या क्षेत्रात खूप मोठं काम आहे. त्यांच्या ह्याच्यातनं आपण घ्यायचं म्हणलं तर की आता करोनामुळे आपली जी परिस्थिती होती, शिक्षकांना कम्प्युटर विषयी काही आपल्यालाही येत नव्हतं, पण हेच आपण शिकलो, कम्प्युटर शिकलो, ऑनलाईन शिक्षण कसं द्यायचं, तर ही जी आपली विचाराची जी पद्धत आहे ही आपण कंटिन्यू ठेवायला पाहिजे. नवीन शिक्षक शिकतील तेव्हा ते मुलांना काहीतरी नवीन देऊ शकतील असं, आणि नवीन बदल आत्मसात करून घेणे हा सगळ्यात महत्वाचा गुण आपण शिक्षकांनी आपल्यामध्ये केला पाहिजे. की सुट्टी म्हणजे शाळेची सुट्टी जरी मुलांनी आपल्याकडे काही मागितलं, काही आपल्याला देता आलं, त्यांना 1 तास म्हणा 2 तास त्यांच्याशी संवाद साधा, त्यांना फोन करा, त्यांना अभ्यासात मदत करा, त्यांना जितकं तुम्ही प्रोत्साहन द्याल तेवढं ते मुलं पुढे जाणार आहे. शिवाय त्यांनी म्हणलं की वाईट गुण चांगले गुण हे दोन्ही मुलांमध्ये असतात, आपण चांगल्यावर फोकस करावं, चांगले गुण त्यांच्या जे आहेत त्याच्यावर फोकस केलं तर ते त्यांना प्रोत्साहन मिळेल आणि ते बदल त्यांच्यात जो घडेल तो एक वेगळाच बदल असेल. त्यांचं म्हणणं आहे की शिक्षण आणि अनुभव ह्या दोघांची जर आपण साथ केली तर यश हे आपल्याला नक्कीच मिळणार आहे. तर शिक्षण आणि अनुभव हे त्यांना दोन्ही मुलांना आपण जर का दिले तरच ती मुलं पुढे येणार आहेत आणि आपल्याला जगात आपलं नाव करायचं असेल, आणि मुलांचं नाव झालं तर आपोआप शिक्षकांचंही नाव होतं. त्यामुळे शिक्षकाला आपण म्हणतो समाज घडवतो म्हणजे नक्की काय करतो, तर मुलांना शिकवतोय आणि त्याप्रमाणे तो पुढे जातोय. हे थोडक्यात आजच्या या वेबिनारची माहिती होती. मॅम, कॅन वी टेक द क्वेश्चन आन्सर्स? Sir, we have one question. Children with the special need, how to include them in the normal school? The students who have some problem like medical problem, hearing problem, or some medical problem, how can we include them in the normal school teaching? There's a question from a Bhagyashri Somvanshi.
그 청각이나 시각이나 어떤 특별한 장애가 있는 학생들은 어떻게 정규 교육 과정에 포함시켜서 교육을 하는지 궁금하다고 질문이 들어왔어요.
그 청각이나 시각이 이게 장애 있는 애들은 아니고 이제 지적 장애, 이제 머리가 다른 애들보다 수준이 떨어진 애들을 지도를 하는데 그 애 같은 경우에는 기술을 배우지 않으면 살 수가 없잖아요. 그래서 방과 활동 시간에 이제 애들을 따로 모아가지고 그냥 한 3년 동안 꾸준히 연습을 시켰어요. 뭐 지게차면 지게차, 굴삭기면 굴삭기라는 이렇게 하니까 이게 청각 시각이 아니고 지적 머리의 지적 능력이 떨어진 애들을 그렇게 3년 동안 방과 후 시간에 계속 방학 동안에도 시켰고 그렇다고 이야기해 주십시오.
Yeah.
In his experience, there were no students would have problem with their eyes and ears. He taught a mentally handicapped child who has some weak mind and weak mental problems. He taught them for learning the skills after school and using winter and summer vacations and using club activities. He did his work for 3 years for them, and it made some results for gaining some certificates for them.
ओके भाग्यश्री ताई त्यांचं असं म्हणणं की त्यांच्या ह्या पूर्ण प्रवासामध्ये असे छात्र किंवा असे स्टुडंट्स त्यांना काही मिळाले नाही. एकच स्टुडंट असा होता ज्याला थोडासा मेडिकल प्रॉब्लेम होता, तर त्याच्यासाठी स्पेसिफिक असं काही न करता त्याला शाळेनंतर त्याच्यासाठी एक वेगळा वेळ दिला त्यांनी आणि त्याच्या ज्या काही प्रॉब्लेम्स होत्या, त्याला ज्या अडचणी होत्या त्या त्यांनी दूर करायचा प्रयत्न केला. Miss, there is one more question from Shweta Zadav, that as a teacher, I also meet many children who are not interested in learning. So how could we help them to increase their interest? As you told your experience, I would like to know, how did you do it? The students who are not interested in studies, like how can we bring them back in the mainstream?
공부에 흥미가 아예 없는 학생들을 어떻게 그 흥미를 가지게 동기부여를 했는지, 그 학습에 아예 흥미가 없고 약간 집중을 못하는 학생들을 어떻게 도와주었는지 궁금하다고.
예, 근데 아까쯤에도 프리젠테이션 거기다 나왔다시피 학생들하고 첫째 대화를 많이 했어요. 이야기를 많이 했고, 그 신문 같은 것을 블로그에다가 이렇게 취업에 관한 것을 블로그에다가 이렇게 놔둬가지고 그걸 보여주면서 상담을 했어요. 그러니까 얘들이 나가서 어떤 자격증을 따야지만이 얘들이 사회에 나가서 필요한 자격증이 무엇인가 그것을 알게 했고, 그리고 또 신문 지상을 이렇게 보면서 여러분들이 사회에 나가서 공부를 안 하게 되면은 어떻게 되는가 알게 해줬고, 또 얘들이 학생들 아르바이트를 해가지고 현실감이 있어요. 이제 아르바이트 하다 보니까 사회에 돌아간 건 알 거 아닙니까? 그래서 아르바이트 해가지고 자기들이 공부를 하지 않으면은 사회에 도태되고 가난하게 살 수밖에 없는 여건이 되겠다라는 생각을 가졌기 때문에 이렇게 한 것 같아요. 동기부여가 가장 중요했고, 또한 대화를 많이 했어요. 대화를 많이 했고, 자, 우리나라에서 관상 이야기를 안 했는데 학생들한테 제가 정말 칭찬을 많이 했어요. 칭찬을 많이 하다 보니까 얘들이 정말 잘한 줄 알고 얘들이 이렇게 따라와 줬다는 것이 이제 그 방법이라고 생각합니다.
There are a few points to give motivation to students. First of all, I talked a lot. We had a lot of conversation with students. With the conversation is about what is your future should be going and what you have to learn and what you have to study for your life and future for gaining some jobs. And he used his blog to use newspaper articles because it is related to their future jobs and some realities. And also most important thing is motivation. So he talked with students and he gave a lots of compliments to them. So it made them to feel great to do something and to feel that they are really good at it. That those are some motivations for students.
ओके, त्यांचं म्हणणं असं आहे की अशा मुलांना त्यांना शिक्षणामध्ये इंटरेस्ट निर्माण करण्यासाठी सगळ्यात महत्वाचं की त्यांच्याशी संवाद साधणे, त्यांना मोटिवेट करणे की तुला कशामध्ये इंटरेस्ट आहे, तुला पुढे जाऊन काय व्हायचंय, आता तुझी जी परिस्थिती आहे त्यातून तुला बाहेर पडायचंय, त्याच्यापेक्षा काहीतरी मोठं करायचंय, तर एक ध्येय तू ठरव. आणि ह्याच्यासाठी महत्वाचं म्हणजे त्याला न्यूजपेपर, आपले जे न्यूजपेपर आहेत त्याच्यामधले येणारे जे लेख आहेत, मोठ्या मोठ्या व्यक्तींचे अनुभव असतात, लेख असतात, हे त्याला वाचायला देणे, जेणेकरून दुसऱ्यांच्या अनुभवावरनं तो शिकू शकतो की ही कठीण परिस्थिती केवळ माझ्यासाठी नाहीये, तर जी काही लोक मोठी झाली आहेत त्यांना सुद्धा ह्या सगळ्यातून जावं लागलं आहे. तर ह्या सगळ्या गोष्टी म्हणजे संवाद साधणे हे सगळ्यात जास्ती महत्वाचं आहे असं त्यांचं म्हणणं आहे. There was one more question, that what is the main USP of the this Korean education, the key point of Korean education?
한국 교육의 가장 핵심되는 포인트, 가장 잘 되어 있는 점이 뭐냐고 물어보고 있어요.
잘 돼 있는 이 점은 제일 보면은 교사들이, 한국 교사들은 가장 우수한 집단에서 이렇게 시험 보고 오잖아요.
네.
우수한 집단의 교사들이 학생들을 이렇게 가르치고 있다는 점. 그리고 두 번째, 국가에서 교육에 대해서는 투자를 아낌없이 하고 있다는 점. 그리고 이제 부모들이 이제 외국에서는 자기 집이 가난하면은 아이들한테 너 밖에서 나가서 돈을 벌어오라 하지만은 한국 부모들은 자기가 가난하고 배고파도 학생들을 공부시킨다는 점, 교육열. 아마 그런 점이 다른 나라보다 더 교육 제도가 잘 돼 있고 뭐 시스템적인 말고 잘 돼 있어서 아마 그런 점 때문에 아마 한국 교육이 세계적인 수준으로 되지 않느냐 그렇게 생각합니다.
The main point of Korean education is, maybe I can say 3 points. First one is that teachers are very great and they study hard to teach students. They gather together and talk about the education for their future. And second one is Korean government invests in education very much. They don't save money for education. They invest very much money. And the third one is the parents are very good at educating their children, because even though they are very poor, they try hard to educate and study their children for their future and gaining some better jobs than their parents. Okay. There are 3 points.
त्यांचं म्हणणं असं की कोरियन शिक्षणाचा सगळ्यात महत्वाचा त्यांचा की पॉइंट म्हणाल तर सरकार त्यांच्या शिक्षण ह्याच्यामध्ये खूप जास्ती पैसे इन्व्हेस्ट करतात, शिक्षणासाठी खूप पैसे इन्व्हेस्ट करतात आणि तिथले पालक ते स्वतः जरी शिकलेले नसतील तरी ते खूप मेहनत घेतात की त्यांच्या मुलांनी काहीतरी त्यांच्यापेक्षा जास्त शिकावं. त्यामुळे शिक्षण हे त्यांचं खूप महत्वाचं हे आहे. आज अख्ख्या जगात कोरियन जी माणसं आहेत, टेक्निकल नॉलेज किंवा कुठल्याही क्षेत्रामधली जी लोक लागतात ती कोरियामधनं दिली जातात. त्यामुळे शिक्षण, पालकांचा सहभाग, सरकारचा सहभाग आणि त्या मुलाचं स्वतःचं मोटिवेशन हे सगळे मिळून आज ते कोरियन शिक्षण जे आहे ते खूप महत्वाचं झालेलं आहे. विशाल सर, शुड बी टेक वन मोर, अजून 1-2 प्रश्न घ्यायचे का थांबूया?
नाही घेता येईल आपल्याला, 1-2 प्रश्न होतील अजून.
There is one more question from Madhuri Bansod. She's asking the students who just don't know how to write, so what should be done for them? They just don't want to write.
How to write something?
Yeah, no, they don't want to write. We are teaching them, but the child is not ready to write and read. So those students who can't read and write, what can be done for them?
선생님, 가르쳐도 만약에 학생이 읽거나 쓰지 못하는 수준의 학생들한테는 어떤 교육을 해야 될지.
네, 저 같은 경우는 그런 학생이 있었어요.
네.
한글을 모르는 학생이 이렇게 3년 동안 가르쳐서 한글을 모르는 학생이 있었어요. 근데 걔는, 나 같은 경우는 대학원도 나왔지만은 그 학생은 고등학생이고 한글도 못 듣는 학생인데 어떤 기계가 고장이 났어요. 근데 저는 못 고치는데 걔가 고쳤어요. 그래서 사람마다 재능이 틀립니다. 보면은 잘하는 분야가 틀려요. 그리고 그 잘하는 분야를 키워주는 것이 교사의 능력이라고 생각합니다. 만약에 얘들이 한글을 모른다 해서 한글을 모를 뿐이지 기술은 나보다 훨씬 더 잘하거든요. 근데 그 학생이 한글 모르는 학생이 나가서 사회 나와가지고 한 10년 전에 그 당시에 우리나라 10년 전 월급이니까 지금으로 이야기하면 한 350에서 400만 원 받았겠죠. 광주에서 지게차 몰면서 이렇게 월급을 받는다고 그렇게 했어요. 근데 애들이 지금 학생들이 만약에 예를 들어서 이렇게 뭐 지능이 이렇게 떨어진다, 지능이 없다라고 하는 것은 제일 중요한 건 교사가 어떤 능력을 이끌어 주는가, 그 잘한 면을 이끌어 주는 것이 가장 중요한 키포인트가 된다고 생각합니다.
He said he had the experience that a student cannot read and cannot write in Korea. And in that situation, he focused on his special talent that he is very good at it. So he focused on learning some certificates, like learning skills. So using that skills, he was able to get a job even though he couldn't write or he couldn't read. So everyone has their own special talent. So the teachers should find out what is his special talent and focus on it, even though the other like reading and writing skills are not good. So a teacher should focus on the student's special talent.
ओके. त्यांचं म्हणणं मुलाला जरी लिहिता वाचता येत नसलं, लिहिता येत नाही वाचता, तर त्याच्यामध्ये काहीतरी प्रत्येक मुलात काहीतरी एक गुण असतो. तर अशा मुलांचा त्याचा गुण, मी त्याला चित्रकलेत आवड आहे, त्याला मेकॅनिकल काही काम आवडतं किंवा काही टेक्निकल गोष्टी आवडतात, तर त्याची ती आवड त्याच्याकडनं जाणून घ्यायची आणि त्या गोष्टीतच त्याला प्रोत्साहन. एखाद्या मुलाला लिहिता वाचता येत नसेल पण त्याची चित्रकला खूप छान असेल तर त्याला चित्रकलेत प्रोत्साहन देऊन तो पुढे जाऊन एक मोठा चित्रकार होऊ शकतो. त्यामुळे त्याचा कल कुठे आहे, केवळ मॅथ सायन्स इंग्लिश त्याला येत नाहीये पण त्याची चित्रकला खूप छान आहे, तर त्या चित्रकलेत त्याला प्रोत्साहन देऊन त्याच्यासाठी त्याला पुढे काय जाण्याचा मार्ग असेल ते त्याला सांगून त्याला त्याच्यात पुढे नेणं, हे जर का तुम्ही केलं तर ते त्याच्या फायद्यासाठी होईल असं त्यांचं म्हणणं आहे. There is one more question. I think we'll take this the last one question that is from Vaishali Khandagre. She's saying, can you suggest some measures regarding how to start vocational courses in the school? How about to start about the vocational courses in the school?
어떻게 직업적인 이 교육 이 코스를 시작할 수 있을지, 시작하는 방법에 대해서 물어보고 있어요.
직업 교육 시작하는 방법이요?
네.
이게 뭔지
어떤 제안을 해줄 수 있냐고.
직업 교육 어떻게 하는 시작 제안이요?
네.
이제 제일 중요한 것은 각 나라마다 상황이 틀립니다. 보면은 상황이
네.
틀리는데 제일 제가 아까쯤에 파워포인트도 이야기했다면 선택과 집중입니다. 보면은 예를 들어 자원이 없는 나라 같은 경우 어떤 것을 선택을 해야 하잖아요. 그것은 선택을 해가지고 그게 완성되면은 다른 것으로. 근데 예를 들자면 우리나라들도 제일 먼저 농업부터 시작을 했어요. 농업이 어느 정도 되니까 중화학공업을 쉽게 시작하고 그 다음에 이게 첨단 IT로 넘어가고 이렇게 했거든요. 돌이 이제 구를 때 위에서는 구를 때는 천천히 흐르지만 어느 정도 가속력이 보면 빨리 흐르잖아요. 그와 마찬가지로 가장 잘하는 부분 선택과 집중을 해야 한다고 생각해요. 예를 들어서 시설이 안 돼 있다라고 하면은 많은 학생들이 와서 연습할 수 있는 조건을 만든다든지, 예를 들어서 뭐 지게차가 한 대다 그럼 많은 학생이 배워야 한다 그러면은 시간을 길게 잡고 이렇게 하는 수가 할 수밖에 없지 않습니까? 그렇게 어떤 직업에서든지 자원이 많으면 좋겠지만은 제일 중요한 건 직업교육 같은 경우는 어떻게 선택과 집중을 잘 해가지고 하느냐가 중요하고, 그것을 운영할 수 있는 능력, 교사 능력이 가장 중요하다 또한 생각해요. 교사가 그걸 운영한 능력이 없다 그러면은 안 되고, 세 번째 직업 정신이 가장 중요하다고 생각합니다. 그러니까 교사는 한국에서 교사라는 것은 공무원이고 국민에게 봉사하는 직업입니다. 이제 다른 나라는 어떤지는 모르겠지만은 자기 직업에 대해서 사명감을 갖고 헌신하는 자세가 가장 중요하다고 생각합니다.
It depends on every countries and their situations, but I suggest that first of all, we have to choice and focus. We should choose something and focus on those things. Because if there are not many resources, then we have to focus on limited resources like human resource or agricultural or technical skills. And that is first one. And second of all, there are really important for teachers. Teachers should operate and suggest some curriculums for students, and their ability is very important. And the third one is teachers' work ethic, because it is related to their professional spirits. They have to study and learn from other countries and other regions. They have to adapt many different ways to adapt for students' education. Those are three things for starting vocational courses.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. I think we will stop here. Very good. I would like to thank our key speaker for virtually joining us from Korea. I'm sure, sir, your experience will enlighten each one of us. Thank you, teachers, for being such active participants, and special thanks to NIE Sakal in association with Surya Datta Group of Industries. I would like to thank the organizing team, the volunteers, and each team member for making this webinar such a successful webinar. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Miss, and thank you one and all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having this seminar. We are all honored to be here and glad to share the experience of Mr. Yun. And we are all thank you for this precious time.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Record